Hello, and welcome to the Charles River Conservancy Parkland Show. My name is Renata von Tscharner, and we are going to talk about a very special aspect of the river. We're actually going to cross the river on some bridges. And we have today with us a guest who knows much about bridges. Welcome, Miguel.
Thank you.
Miguel Rosales is a bridge designer, and he tells me he's been designing bridges for 20 years. I don't quite believe him, but he insists that's the case. And we are going to look at some bridges that cross the river from Cambridge to Boston, and then one bridge in Boston. So we're going to look at the Zakim Bridge, and then we're going to look at the pedestrian bridge that is planned to link the Charles Circle with the Esplanade, right next to the Longfellow Bridge. And we're also going then to look at another bridge that's still in the design stage at the Museum of Science, a pedestrian bridge that would connect upriver from the Museum of Science. So Miguel, let's look at your wonderful bridges, and we start with the image of the river. We're looking at bridges that are all pretty much on the very last part of this river and on the right hand side, and we are going to look at bridges, and you illuminate those bridges beautifully. Tell us about how you got to design bridges, and then about the bridges that have become such important parts of Cambridge and Boston.
Well, the bridge design in my career really started with the Zakim Bridge. And that was a bridge that, was in a long process, and it was a very community-oriented process. People really wanted to do a special crossing of the river, and for the longest time there was a big controversy. But now we have a new bridge, and it's a new landmark of the city. It's very well known, and I think has been very successful. And to me, that bridge created a role model for all other new bridges in the city.
Yeah.
Of course, together with the new crossing, you also have new parks. So I think the bridge and the parks created this completely new image for that area that used to be called the Lost Mile, the Charles River. And now more and more people are coming to the location, and they are enjoying the river, and it became really part of the community that didn't exist for the longest time. Mm-hmm. It's always important to do a bridge design that reflects contemporary design, and I think this bridge reflects the future of Boston. It's the main entrance from the interstate, and it's the first thing that people see approaching the city, so it gives a very nice impression of what is happening in Boston.
Yeah.
And some years back, I don't know, you remember that the lights were taken down for a while because of funding.
And you took a strong stand on that. You really became an advocate for those lights, which is wonderful.
Yes, and recently, Secretary Davey and Frank De Paola, the highway administrator, sponsored doing a new lighting for the bridge. And that's something that people are very excited. It just was completed recently, and now the bridge will be able to have many different colors that it wasn't possible before. And you can see here the variation, and depending on an event, you'll be able to change the color of the lighting.
Yes. So that was just a little glimpse of the big bridge, which you worked. How many years did you work on that bridge?
7 years.
7 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
It's a long bridge. It's a big bridge.
Yes.
And it has definitely. It has given a lot of character to Boston, to Cambridge, to the Charles River, to the region. It's a real landmark. So we are very grateful to have that bridge and to have it illuminated. So let's now move to a smaller bridge.
Yes. This one is a new pedestrian bridge that is going to cross Storrow Drive. And it really starts in Beacon Hill and then goes to the Esplanade and ends near the community boating. It's really a bridge that is intended to complement the Longfellow Bridge, and it has become part of the Longfellow Bridge project. It was added in a later stage, and now they are, going to be built together, and that's very exciting because, for the first time you'll have a nice looking pedestrian bridge over Storo Drive.
Yeah, and I understand the reason it was added because the current bridge is really not accessible enough for wheelchairs, and for bicycles it's also very hard. So this bridge will be accessible.
Yes, and it will be much wider. You know, it will increase from 7 feet to 14 feet. So that will make it much more comfortable to cross. And it's also better integrated. If you look at right now how the bridge connects to Beacon Hill, it's not very attractive. You have a lot of ramps in that area, and you know, it will be much better design. The way you approach from Charles Street, Charles Circle, you know, to the Esplanade.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's also interesting that a historic bridge somehow is being related to a new bridge, and they are supposed to work together. Because as you know, the Longfellow Bridge is being renovated right now, and there will be new lighting illuminating the arches. There will be all sorts of improvements to the structure so it can survive another 100 years. You know, it's a very old structure, but people really wanted to keep it. And it will have wider sidewalks, new lighting. It will be cleaned up completely. You know, the granite has been in disrepair for a long time. And this bridge is very close. You know, the pedestrian bridge, you can see it here. You know, they are kind of next to each other. One important consideration in the crossing was, how do you keep as much of the landscape intact? So it's a very transparent bridge. It's kind of floating over the landscape. We didn't want to have something very heavy. Mm-hmm. And it's also a little bit farther away from the Longfellow Bridge, which gives a little more breathing space. Because when you cross right now Storo and you get close to the two, one is very close to the other, so you don't really have time to look at one, you know, from the other. They're kind of superimposed, and that will help, you know, the view.
Now, before we move on to the next image, right now we know that the cars on Storo Drive, they go through two arches of the Longfellow Bridge, and I know the Esplanade Association and also the Conservancy and other groups have been discussing with Mass DOT to maybe have all the traffic just under one arch. And I guess this would also work with this pedestrian bridge. That would be possible.
Yes. This span crosses the two lanes. You know, all the lanes that go in Storo Drive. So it wouldn't matter if you eliminated one of them.
It wouldn't be eliminate, but it would be putting them closer together, and they would be all under one arch, which would make the parklands, of course, much bigger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And here you can see the view. It's very light. It's a steel structure. It's a very similar type of structure from the Longfellow Bridge, but it's a new contemporary interpretation of it. I will say that the Esplanade Association, and particularly Herb Nolan, was very important, you know, in this crossing. They really wanted to make this crossing better, together with all the other agencies like WAC Boston and Live Streets, and of course yourself, you know, the Conservancy. They were always very supportive of improving this structure. And here's the new entrance, you know, from Charles Circle. Right now there is two ramps there. It's going to be consolidated into only one. So the historic neighborhood will have more space, you know, more breathing space. And of course, once you are on the bridge, you have a beautiful view of the river. We make a very light railing so you can really see through. And at the end of the crossing, there will be a big overlook.
You can see Cambridge from there?
Yes, you can see Cambridge from there, and you can see the whole panorama of the Longfellow Bridge also. And we expect to be, you know, very, very popular.
It's a very popular place for tourists to stop.
Yes.
Often you see a whole group there at the end of this bridge before they go down. You see the Longfellow Bridge, you see the sailboats, you see the skyline of Cambridge. It's a very attractive location, and I'm glad you're emphasizing that.
Also, you know, we try to make new connections. There will be stairs coming down that will connect to either under the Longfellow Bridge or up the historic stairs. That will be, you know, a more gracious way to do that. It will be illuminated at night, so people will be able to use it safely at night, and we'll have LED lighting, you know, which is very low maintenance and, you know, very easy to manipulate. And I think it's a very exciting crossing, and it's a $12.5 million structure that Mass DOT added to the project, which we are very grateful to them that was part of the project. And now, we would like to maybe move something else.
All right, let's before we move to our third bridge,
Okay.
I think
actually there are two bridges.
There are two bridges,
Yes.
exactly. But what I think, the Zakim Bridge obviously is just for cars, although it was open for pedestrians on Mother's Day at Walk Boston arranged. But the bridge at Charles Circle that goes to the Esplanade, that will also help to make the parklands more accessible,
Yes.
both for pedestrians, for wheelchairs, for bicyclists. And this connectivity is very much part of what the Conservancy is all about. We are advocating for underpasses. There already is one at the Longfellow Bridge.
Yes.
There is one at the Mass Avenue Bridge, the BU Bridge, and we're working hard to add those underpasses at the River Street, Western Avenue, and Anderson Bridge. So to make all these pathways really connected for runners and bikers and everybody who wants to be on the river. And I think this next project that we're going to talk about at the Museum of Science, that will be a huge advantage and a great asset and a really new connectivity that is being created. So let's look at the area here at the Museum of Science that we're looking at.
Yes, as you know, the Museum of Science, when it was built, it was built right on the water. So people are not able to cross from Cambridge to Boston anymore on the water side, and they have to go behind the Museum of Science, on Monsignor O'Brien Highway. And it's very frustrating for runners to need to go in that direction because you get a lot of cars and pollution where you could stay on the riverside. So these two bridges will resolve that issue. You'll be able to always stay on the water side, and it will open a completely new panorama of the Museum of Science. Because right now the Museum of Science is a little bit facing back to the river. There is not a main entrance from the river into the museum. And I think once you have these pedestrian bridges, you'll be able to open again, the Museum of Science to the water.
Yeah. There are already some elements of the Museum of Science that face the river. There is the pavilion, this greenish, long part underneath the dome. That's the pavilion that was there originally when the dam was built in 1918, when the area of the Museum of Science was just a park. And that pavilion is there, beautiful pavilion, and it's open to the public. This is a great place to have a view. It's also great to have a view of the Charles River from the restaurant area. Mm-hmm. And there is now plans to create a Charles River wing at the Museum of Science that the Yockey Foundation has funded for $10 million. So there are definitely plans to make the Charles River a more part of the museum in terms of the content of the exhibits. And what you're proposing is really to make also the access. So give us, explain to us of how this project, who commissioned you to design that, how did that come about?
Well, this project was commissioned by the MDC, now it's called DCR, some years back. It goes that
far back.
Yes, yes, some years back. And Carl Hagland was involved, he was the project manager. And it was really part of looking at all the connectivity in the Charles River Basin, near the part of the Big Dig, part of the Zakim Bridge.
And the Big Dig and also of the new basin.
Yes, of the new basin.
Part of the new basin planning, yes.
So this was kind of like the outskirts of the new basin. But I think DCR was always very interested in making that connection. And that has been always part of the plan.
Yeah. So you now then designed it. Do you want us to move on to to show the details, or do you?
Yes, we will start first with the bridge that is next to the parking garage of the Museum of Science, and that's on the Cambridge side. That bridge, it's a very important connection, and it has to be designed in a way that the Museum of Science parking garage is not touched, so it has to be kind of floating over the water, and then will connect in front of the Museum of Science, and you can see here how some areas are not very accessible, and that will resolve that issue. And here is in plan. It's a curved structure because we always think like when you are doing a pedestrian bridge, it's always good to go in the direction people want to go, and people want to cross in a curve, go towards Boston.
Yeah.
And then once you get into the land, you can continue through, and then you will cross again, on the canal near the other mobile bridge that the city has in that location.
Just to kind of help orientation a bit, maybe I'm the pointer here, there is the boathouse here.
Yes.
And
this is the garage.
And this is the garage right here. This is the parking garage of the Museum of Science.
Yes.
And this is where the restaurant looks out, beautiful vista. And this is the pavilion I was referring to that was part of the original 1918 plan when the whole area was a park. So it would be possible to go upriver from the Museum of Science, always facing upriver, and then go over to the Esplanade.
And here is a close-up of the structure. It was a very constrained area, but we found a way to support the structure from a little space between the boathouse and the parking garage. And there is a tower there that will have a series of cables that will support the structure from only one side. And that's interesting because then all the view will be focused towards Boston. You will have this really nice panorama of the city. And there's another view here.
And the park here to the right, which is near the Sonesta Hotel, which is a lovely park with wonderful mature trees, really doesn't get much use. So as part of the riverfront study by the Community Development Department of the City of Cambridge, they looked at that park, of how that park could become more of a destination, maybe with food trucks, with more elements there, more benches, more animating elements. And I think the bridge could greatly contribute that, because then is now a reason for people to go there.
Yes, and it will be like a terminus. You will have something to look at the end, so it's not a dead end. You will have something to go towards when you're walking.
Yeah. Now, you always like night images. I think your bridges lend themselves very well for illuminations. With the cables, you really create an important image. And I think it's interesting to think of the Charles River as a place where you would go for an evening celebration, not just on the 4th of July, but all through the year. And I'm so glad you're introducing lights. But before we go further, I would love for you to give us a little bit of a kind of your philosophy when you start designing a bridge. Where do you start? What are the kind of the points you touch when you go through your design?
Well, first of all, I always try to look at the site very carefully, and that's very important. So when the bridge is built, it looks integrated, it looks part of the context. I think that's important. Then we always try to innovate, try to find a new shape or a new structure that will excite people, make them feel proud that they're building a new bridge. And that's important because otherwise, you don't get a lot of support. You need to have something exciting, something new, something that people will look forward to build. All of these structures are not the normal structures. They're complicated, they are difficult to build sometimes, and there needs to be enough community support, to build them.
And in a way, it's like something that looks easy is often the hardest, and probably with bridge design too, if it looks really elegant and easy, that's probably the most challenging thing to design.
Yes, and we always want to eliminate things that are superfluous. You really want to just put in the bridge what is completely necessary, but in a beautiful shape. That's really the trick. How do you shape the structure, which is completely essential, but it still has an attractive shape to it?
Now let's go to the other side of the river. We're now on the Boston side. So guide us through what we're looking at now.
Well, this is actually a new design. This was not done during the DCR contract because originally we were going to have a bridge that will open, where it was going to be behind the first building. and was going to go into the parking area where the state police is located right now. But when I visited the site like 2 or 3 months ago, I thought maybe it's better to still keep in the water side and not go behind the building. And then I thought, what if we make another curb bridge here that matches the curb on the other side, but it's opposite. So it's like a pair and, similar way of supporting it. And I thought it would be like a nice pairing of two structures. Of course, this bridge has to open because there is a lot of high boats, sailboats that need to cross. And that was an important consideration, how to make it open.
Yeah. So I think you got some images of how it would work, so that
Yes.
even when it's closed, the dock tours can go underneath.
Yes. But a sailboat, you will need to open it, and I will try to coordinate with the Craigie Bridge, so at the same time one open, the other one will open, and the control room will be at the same location, so it will be consolidated.
And that happens mostly around the 4th of July when some big boats come into the basin,
Yes.
and that's when the Craigie Bridge opens, and that's when this bridge would open. So it wouldn't be pedestrians and bicyclists who would operate themselves.
No, it will need to be controlled, by the same system.
Yeah.
And here's, how it looks when it's open. It's very sculptural because it's in a curve, and then when you open, you will see this curve going up. And again, it's only supported from one side because we wanted to make it very minimum, so you can see the beautiful view, but at the same time have something exciting. This one would use like a very new technology of hydraulic cylinders, that have become very popular all over the world. They have very low maintenance, especially in the climate like Boston, and that will be the way that will operate. And it will not have a counterweight. It will just be by hydraulic.
So the technology of that is also an innovation. It's a new approach to a movable bridge.
Yes.
And you had mentioned that a bridge has to be something exciting, has to be something beautiful, and this particular bridge is still looking for a funding source. So if you are excited by this bridge or part of that bridge, you need to let Miguel know and the Charles River Conservancy know, and we'll make sure that you can be part of that project. But you have some more images of the bridge, I believe.
Yes.
Oh, this is a beautiful, another night image.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can see here it's a very special place because you have the Bunker Hill Monument right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then this bridge has another tower, but it's on the side. So, the view of the water keeps preserved. And I think it will be a very exciting place to be at night. You will see the Longfellow Bridge, you will see the two cities. It will be, kind of unforgettable.
Yeah, and what you also, just on the right, at the right edge of the picture, you see the cables of the Zakim Bridge.
Yes.
And then on the left-hand side, you actually see this pavilion, this oriental pavilion on the left-hand side, which is a great place.
But you had your party for your...
That's right, we had our 10th anniversary party there. It's a great location. And it's still not fully used, this area. So
Yes.
this bridge would really greatly increase the use of that.
And this is just some other views, when you're crossing it, things when it's closed. Then you will get into the pavilion. The pavilion is here on the right side.
That's the pavilion. And that's one of the most beautiful vistas of the river. Yes. From this pavilion and the benches that are there. And you would make it accessible. So this view here, you would pass the pavilion and then you would go underneath this protruding part of the Museum of Science and then go in front of the parking garage.
And then you will start the new bridge right, at the entrance of the parking garage.
Yeah.
And of course, you'll see the cables and the tower kind of peeking out, so it kind of gives you a destination point again, where to go. And then once you are in the crossing, will be, very transparent, and you'll have the whole view of Boston from there.
And now you are in Cambridge.
Yeah, now you're in Cambridge.
Very good. Now I know you have a few bridges up your sleeves also. I don't know if there are any of them you want to mention, any other ones that you're working on?
Well, I think Mass DOT has been very supportive to do a new bridge at Lever Circle. That project is going to proceed in the near future, and I'm going to be involved in that project.
Very good.
And then the city of Boston is also planning to do a new bridge at North Washington Street, connecting the north end to Charlestown.
Yeah.
And that is a historic bridge, but it's going to be demolished, and we're going to do a new bridge.
And for Cambridge citizens, that will be of interest because you can now go to the North Point Park, take the new pedestrian bridge, which you didn't do, but it's a very beautiful bridge also. And then you can continue on to the Harbor Walk, and that brings you then to the Washington Street Bridge, and you can cross over to Boston. So it actually will also add to Cambridge's connectivity.
Yeah, and it's part of the Freedom Trail, so it'll be, very used.
All right. Now, if you have questions about Miguel Rosales and his firm, that's your website, RGA Bridges, very
Yes.
appropriate. So I want to thank you for showing us your bridges, and it's a great joy to know that you're working on those bridges and to strengthen the connection between the Cambridge and Boston and the parklands and the river. And thank you very much, Miguel.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.